everybody. It's me, Patricia Cori, coming to you with Beyond the Matrix, the program that invites you to think outside the box. My first guest to bring in the new year is someone very special. I've had him on before. You know him, of course, Brad Olsen. He's a very captivating spirit and a thought leader. He's the author, I think he's up to 10 books now. And we, of course, know those. And in his Esoteric Series, he had Modern Esoteric, Future Esoteric, Beyond Esoteric, his last one, as I recall, when I interviewed him last. And by now, he's probably got Multigalactic Esoteric. Just love him. What a brilliant mind. He's an award-winning author, a publisher. He produces events. He does keynote presentations. I mean, he's really, really in the know, and a very bright blend of all the things I love: esoteric knowledge, wisdom from experience, research to the immaculate end, and a blend of optimism and realism that makes you compelled to hear him and listen and learn from him. So I'm delighted to have him on. I'm going to bring him on in a minute. I just wanted to thank you all for tuning back in. I need your support, of course. So like all the other YouTubers, I'd like you to take a moment and please click on the subscribe button. You know, it's all I can do to fight against the algorithms and stay on and censorship and all the other goodies and keep afloat on YouTube. But it really does make a difference if you subscribe. Then click on that like button and help me stay afloat. So please do that now, and I'll be right back with Brad. Start fresh. Hi, and yes, Brad Olsen. Hiya, Brad. How are you?
Hey, Patricia, I'm doing great. Nice to see you again.
You too. Where in the world are you now, Mr. Adventure Traveler?
Well, for today, I'm out at my ranch in northwestern Nevada, but on Monday, I'm going to be flying across the big puddle over to Southeast Asia. I'm going to be in the country of Laos for 3.5 weeks, attending the ASEAN Tourism Forum, and I'm writing an article about the Plain of Jars in the country Laos. And it's a megalithic site. I've never been there before, but perhaps next time I'm talking to you, I can give you a full update of these ginormous jars in the middle of a plain in the jungle, and nobody knows what they were for or who built them. So
I went to Laos so many years ago, but it was still much more primitive than it is now, I'm sure. I used to work for the Tourism Authority of Thailand, and we did, you know, the whole Southeast Asian territories used to align with Thailand commercially. So I got to see some of these places, but never heard about the jars. How exciting for you. You know, I just want to say I had one of my most extraordinary mystical moments in a small temple in Laos. We were there. I had some journalists with me, so we sent them off to do the tourist thing. And I meandered into this Buddhist temple. There's a wooden Buddha there. It was very, very ancient, very humble. It was a very poor place. And I walked in, I came around the corner of this entranceway, and there was this Buddha. And it was the first time in my life I have ever dropped to my knees in front of anything resembling anything like a religious symbol or whatever. Dropped to my knees, felt this energy wrap around me like a blanket, and wept. And it's not like me to do that. I really respect people that are in a temple, and it's their tradition. I don't want to make a show out of anything, but it was very, very powerful. So I'm sure you're going to have extraordinary experiences there.
Yeah, I've been there one time myself in 2004. So it's been 20 years. And I found the people to be the friendliest I've ever met anywhere in the world. I've been to 50 some countries. They're just so friendly and smiling. They're landlocked, so they don't have any ocean access, but it was part of French Indochina. So the food's really good. You can go get a baguette sandwich, and just like Vietnamese food or Cambodian food, it has that French fusion in it. And so that's always nice too.
But I would imagine if you're traipsing around in the jungle, you might want to be taking some water purification systems, if you get my drift.
That's a good point. Yeah, or always bring bottled water and make sure the cap's on there tight. I've tried a couple times people tried to push over tap water in India, oh boy, you'd get real sick from that. So you always got to check the cap to make sure it's sealed.
Absolutely. But what I'm talking about, but can't name on YouTube, is Jim Humble's.
Oh yeah.
You want to have
Yeah.
some? Do you have any of that?
Boy, I do. I hadn't thought about bringing it. That might be a
And
good idea.
take it from a girl who's ended up in the hospital in Burma and another time in Thailand. And Mr. Humble's treatment is a good thing to have in your pocket.
I heard he just passed away too. I had been in correspondence with him. I did some research on his miracle product and we had exchanged emails for a while there. He was a real nice, humble guy, I thought.
Yeah, that's why his name is Humble. He died at 94. I have to say, I was blessed to interview him, geez,
Hmm.
20 years ago? 20 years ago, I think, 15 max. And he turned me on to, I was already aware of his product, his miracle, but he really turned me on to the depth of it. So I don't go anywhere without it. You know, don't leave your credit card without it. That's old
Yeah,
slogan. Don't leave home without it is my
that's
slogan.
right.
Like I said, make sure you've got it with you in those jungles because there can be some nasty stuff going on there.
That's true. Yeah.
So speaking about going to places, we were going to talk today about 2024 and oh my God, all of the expectation and anticipation. I thought we should kind of dive into because you and I have a very similar approach to some things with
Yeah.
and this is what I said in the intro, the optimism blended with realism and a lot of grounded energy, which I think is so important now because people are just over the top all the time. And you know, the theories are flying and it's all, you know, the mental body or the emotional body, and we need leadership of people that are very grounded. And you know,
Yeah.
you are such a person. So as we look at 2024, my first question for you is what are you bringing that new? What are you bringing new into 2024 for your experience of what comes?
Well, I just made a New Year's resolution to myself that I'm not going to think negative thoughts about anyone or anything. And I've already caught myself a couple times and just say, hey, I don't do that anymore. And you know what, Patricia, I've already found that it's changed my whole attitude. And sometimes the way I think about people, if perhaps I've been slighted or thought I've done wrong, it just doesn't matter anymore. At the very minimum, I'm indifferent, but I'm not going to think bad thoughts anymore. So that's my own personal commitment to myself coming into 2024. But I tell you, the year's already not even a week old and it's already out to a bang. Look at the Epstein list is now coming out and there's more to come. Shocking names to be revealed. I understand the date, January 20th, is going to be the bombshell date with a lot of names. People that we thought were good folks, actors, actresses, people in Hollywood, executives, members of Congress.
You thought they were
This could be a big year of revelations.
yeah, have to. First of all, congratulations on your commitment to not thinking bad thoughts. I'd love to talk to you in the middle of the year and see what's seeped in that you managed to filter or not, because there's just so much going on. But yeah, the this information is. I'm. I have a strainer that I'm letting. That when information comes through me, it's like a sieve. I strain it first, and I'm always saying, who benefits from this information? So you know, because as we see the information flying, the information highway is ridiculous now. It's just like pow, pow.
Right.
So I've got this strainer, and it's like, okay, my first question is who benefits from this information? And I think about that before I start to think about the information. Who wants this information out and who benefits from it? So, you know, in the case of this list, we shall see. Certainly, Andy isn't doing very well already. He's in trouble again.
Yeah, well, we all to you and me and I would say most of your listeners, this should be no surprise. Some of the names on this list, we all saw it coming. Yeah, the big denials that they had nothing to do with it. Well, we just see now that they're bold-faced liars.
Yeah.
And really, They were in it. But what I really think is the most important revelation in all this is what this blackmail, and that's what Epstein Island was all about, a big honey trap to get politicians, famous people, executives
Sure.
to entrap them. And the big story here, the story behind the story, is what was it being used for? And it was a giant blackmail, extortion
That's right.
trap to get people to do
And
the will of the globalists who I think were behind all this.
what's interesting that
Mm.
Frey came out, and of course, everybody's desperately waiting to see if Mr. T is on that list.
Right, right.
Was he involved? And so Giuffre came out and said, Mr. T, yes, he was. I think she said, yes, he was on the plane, but he never had sex with any of the girls and he
Mm.
never did anything wrong, or something to that effect. And question, the person was questioning, said, but was he there? Yes, but did he try to flirt with you? Yes, he flirted with me, but he never did he never had sex. So it's interesting because I think that Mr. T is going to be admonished from this whole thing, and that it's quite honestly very good for him that this is coming out, because apparently he kicked this dude out of Mar-a-Lago. Did you know that?
Yep, that's right.
Apparently he said
And
you like them way too young, man, and
yeah,
he was kicked out. So that's exciting news. That's important news, I think.
it is important news. And once again, behind the scenes, Patricia, you might be able to see that Mr. T maybe never really did fully lose power. Because remember, right before he left office, he put out an executive order to restore the republic. And this is what's really important because I write about it in my book, Beyond Esoteric, about the Act of 1871 when this country was hijacked and turned into a corporation in that year. It was right after the Civil War. Ulysses S. Grant really is one of the worst presidents of all time. He was a raging alcoholic, and we had a very corrupt Congress, and they were basically broke. So they sold this country down the river and made it a corporation. That's why all our names on our social security card, driver's license, birth certificates is all in caps. So that's your straw man. And I also describe all this in Beyond Esoteric. And since 1871, we lost the republic and we became a so-called democracy. And it's really the cover for this corporate entity, USA Inc. And so when T-Man signed these documents saying that we're going to restore the republic, well, you need a president to be in that position. So just like during the Civil War, when you had Lincoln and the Southern president, two presidents reigning at the same time over the same territory called the United States, that we have the same situation, but a lot of people don't realize it. If they did, well, then he became the 19th president of the Republic, and now he's running for the 45th president of the corporation, which I would say, if he's allowed to even run, if this election goes through in November, that he would dissolve the corporation. Bar none, it's over for them. And that's why there is so much blowback on this guy. And they keep trying to bring him to court over these charges that really he keeps deflecting. And you can see that every time they try to hit him with something new, it backfires and he only gets stronger.
The question, and this is rhetorical because you and I think alike, that I think a lot of people that are listening are asking is why, if that is the case, and we've got the CIC situation for those of you with the initials, then why does it have to reach the exasperation point where we're seeing the absolute destruction of everything, the breakdown of everything? It's very hard for even your most open-minded person to consider that if that is the plan, then how do we get back? In other words, okay, if there is an erection, how do we get back from such devastation that we've got the country, of course, I'm not in America, but I speak for it. The country totally infiltrated now. The gangs, the hellacious crime potential that comes from that, uh, and so much other devastation. How do we get back from that with the so-called erection? Is one.
Well, as Mr. T said, the first thing he would do is restore the wall, which, by the way, it was very effective. They've just basically allowed holes to be cut in it, and that's where all these migrants are pouring through. That's a whole other issue about sleeper cells and these military age men that have been pouring in, and
Yeah,
some of them with Chinese
lots of
passports,
them. Lots of
a
them.
lot of them
Yes,
having a place to go, having a credit card handed to them, and a safe house.
I just saw that it was a couple of days ago. I just saw this video of these, very, 20 to 35-year-old Chinese guys. Of course, it's very difficult to tell from video, but
Mm,
young, able men, Chinese, all Chinese. And it's like, is anybody paying attention to this?
right. And having a place to go, they're getting on their own special buses with presumably a home to go to. So that's the classic example of a sleeper cell, that they are beholden to a foreign power, yet the barbarians are inside the gate. So they're just waiting for their orders to go out and blow up that substation, to hit our infrastructure in a certain way. Of course, they're going to blame it on hackers. There's so much predictive programming on that. Have you seen the new Obama movie? He was the producer, and
I
Big Mike.
anything that
Well, you got to see it.
any
Leave the world behind.
I wouldn't see it because I am aware. I just saw a video. I do not remember the name of the person, but I can put the link on it. This guy and his wife who study sound waves,
Yeah.
and they have come out with this statement and some video information that there are four overlay soundtracks over the original soundtrack, and
Yeah.
there is weaponry in in fact, the movie is about this weapon, the actually using the weapon
Yeah.
in the movie.
Yep.
So aside from the fact that anything Obama and Mike do, I'm not interested in the slightest.
Could always put it on mute, but it's such a classic case of predictive programming.
Yeah,
I don't watch movies anymore for entertainment. I just watch them to decode.
that's
And
right.
there's so much to unpack and decode in this one. And what they're basically saying is this country is going to be brought to its knees. They're going to blame it on a cyber attack, but I would say it's probably going to be these sleeper cells and the barbarians within the gate. The fifth column is the old saying from the Spanish Civil War, when the president was asked, well, how do you know that the general basically was trying to take Madrid? And they said, well, how do you know that you're going to be able to take over the city of Madrid? It had the big walls around it, and the troops were outside the gate. And he says, well, we have a fifth column. And what that meant was there was another regiment that had infiltrated within the city of Madrid, and they had already taken over some of the most key government facilities. Just like when we went back into Iraq in the second Iraq war. And I saw you're going to be on with Michael Jaco, and you might want to ask him about when our troops went into Baghdad the second time. Remember the first time they pulled out right before they got there? Papa Bush didn't, for some reason, want to go all the way in. But the second time they did. And what was the first thing we did? We were the fifth column going into Baghdad. We took the Museum of Antiquities in Baghdad.
Right.
Seems, wow, that's kind of an odd thing. You'd think you'd go for the military facilities, or at least the radio station and the media. And so I asked Michael Jaco about that because, of course, we all heard, well, what's so important about the antiquities? It
Trolls.
wasn't the museum itself. It was what was below the museum. And what was below the museum is a very ancient cave. And in that cave was a stargate. And several of these stargates have been found around the world. I have a picture of the one that was found in 1896 in Egypt. And Saddam had his hands on one. And the whole reason for the second Iraq war, probably the first one too, was because Saddam was starting to get results. He was actually able to use the Stargate and put some of his agents, which is kind of like a time machine, and you could put your agents before or ahead of time, and the US couldn't stand that. So we went right in there and got it. Our fifth column was very successful. Remember, it took several months before they even captured him. And Michael Jaco had a vision of his capture the day he was caught.
We're not really going to believe that a guy who had a Stargate and a bunker 25 levels down into the earth allowed himself to get caught in a little pit that somebody dug out with clean underwear and $100,000 in cash. Are we?
Well, I'd say take it up with Michael Jaco, because that is basically what he said, and he was there. He was there for it, and he knew the guys who made the capture. And
My
but
gut on that was when I saw that come down, I just broke into laughter. It's like they couldn't get anybody into, he was untouchable, and yet they got that little kid to go in there. They got a journalist to go into the 25-foot
yeah,
bunker, but nobody could reach him. Nobody could get to him.
even more unrealistic was a CNN crew that went and interviewed OBL, uh, or code name in the CIA, Tim Osmond, right before 9/11, and Bill Cooper, who famously said, "You're telling me that a CNN crew is going to go up to the cave in Afghanistan and interview him, and our intelligence agency can't track this guy down?"
Exactly.
Of course, Bill Cooper died 2 months after 9/11, and he predicted that attack was going to happen.
Yeah. It's not life enhancing to be predicting those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was, I'll have to ask Michael about that, because all I can say is my gut level is, for me, it's almost 100% right. And when I saw that scenario, I just broke into laughter.
Yeah.
I love the touch of the clean underwear. That's really, I mean, here there's this guy who could get on a speed train to anywhere in the world. In fact, he's probably in Cuba somewhere having sex with 12-year-olds. But
Yeah.
that's a subject for another day.
Well, maybe ask Jaco how come Saddam didn't jump into his own Stargate and just go disappear somewhere in the future or the past. Maybe that would have saved his butt.
Did you ask him?
I didn't ask him that question, but it's a good one to ask.
I'll bring it up because I'll talk to him in a little while.
Yeah.
So, I was going to ask you, what about Antarctica? You having had such an experience of it, and there's such a buzz now. There's apparently some. I am not informed with specific information, so something I ran across was an image that looked photoshopped, of some guys that claimed they found a military base there, and it was a big disc. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there is quite a bit of disinformation about Antarctica. As you know, I went down there 5 years ago on a sailboat. It was a 26-day expedition, and I was going there to try to find out anything I could, even to find out if there was a flat Earth, which there's not. I walked around on continental landmass Antarctica, and I was watching over the shoulder of my captain the whole trip and poring over maps, and everything is exactly as the maps show. There is a continent down there, and people misidentify the ice shelves. Of course, there's these giant ice shelves. Ice in a glacier kind of moves like water in slow motion. It'll come off a mountain and it'll slowly push its way to the ocean, and it breaks off into giant glaciers. In fact, that was the very first thing we saw on the boat, was a 30-story tall flat top iceberg floating in the Southern Ocean, going north and eventually melting. And you can go right up to these ice shelves. We did it ourselves to go collect some blue ice, because when we were in the Arctowski Polish base, we spent a day, 2 days there, and one night we were invited for dinner and then drinks afterwards. And they came out with a big ice bucket of blue ice. It's bluish. It's very old. It's compacted.
Like
And
glacier ice.
yeah, they literally blue. You can see it in pictures. That picture of me that I use in some of my bio shots is with the blue ice in the background. And Yeah, you can hold it up and it's got a bluish tint. It's very old. It's compacted down. And
Yeah.
so they used it in our mixed drinks. And so they put it in a glass and then poured some whiskey and mixer in there.
That's
And
cool.
it pops like popcorn. So we thought it was so cool that we went out to the ice shelves ourselves with an ice pick and collected our own blue ice for our own cocktails. So you get all these mysteries down there, and some of them, like trying to find a ship under the ice or pyramids poking through or antediluvian civilizations or bases of the cabal. Well, we didn't find any of that. I certainly tried. I certainly asked anybody I could, but the things that we did find, I didn't expect. So, for example, one of the bases, which was run by Argentinians, we were asking them the same questions. You heard anything? These ships under the ice. Supposedly, there's three of them, three motherships that have been identified since the 1970s with the nickname Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria.
That's cute.
Yeah, it's kind of a joke, but it's a good way to remember them. And I think I can identify one of them is on the old claim of New Schwabenland. And it's called the Conan base. In 2013, you can go to the Google Wayback Machine. They were excavating it. It's kind of a famous photo. That one I do believe is genuine. Some of those other ones you referred to that came out recently, I ran them by some people. One guy who runs the trips for an Antarctica expedition company, and he didn't think they were real, mainly because in one of the series of photos, they show a double prop helicopter. He says, I can tell you there's not a single one of those on the continent of Antarctica, that maybe it's Greenland, maybe it's Patagonia, but it's not the ice fields down here. So the one thing that we found at this Argentinian base, and it happened to have been a sighting directly below another Argentinian base called Belgrano 2, that there was a UFO sighting with some orbs just a few weeks before we got there, and the inter banter of the bases got it to these guys at another base that we were visiting. And the guy finally told us, yeah, it was a big deal. The people were talking about it all the time, and it got to us, and then some other people on other bases found out about it. So there is some paranormal UFO sighting stuff going on down there. But the other big one that I found out when I was there is that indeed there are no-fly zones, and the most infamous one is near the South Pole. And you can land a plane on one side of the South Pole, but you cannot fly at full altitude above it. And the reason is there's some whistleblowers, including Admiral Byrd himself, who was the first pilot to fly over the South Pole, said in his diary that he witnessed this giant hole in the ice.
Yeah.
And then some 20 years later, he was summoned back during Operation High Jump, before the actual battle or confrontation with the Nazis at New Schwabenland, which was the Battle of High Jump. The month before, he was summoned to go back, and he said it's big enough, it's miles wide. Even Brian S., Linda Bolton Howe's whistleblower who witnessed it, said, yeah, it was big enough to take one of our Hercules jets, cargo ships, down into it, enough room to turn around and fly back out. Byrd did the same thing. There are 3 hours of missing time, and he went into this otherworldly land with a green landscape, and they said they saw a woolly mammoth down there, and then they were escorted by 2 UFOs with Third Reich insignia, and the men came over on his radio and said, "You're in good hands, Admiral. We are taking you into the domain." And they had German or Nordic accents. And then Admiral Byrd flew to this city, kind of like the Emerald City in The Wizard of Oz, and he had a meeting with the master.
Master.
And it was a very high-tech civilization. This is all underneath the ice. And they called them Flugerods, was the name of the UFOs. And in fact, the whole purpose of Operation High Jump was Admiral Byrd and the whole armada of High Jump was tasked to retrieve one of the Flugerods, to get one of their UFOs to bring it back so we could backward engineer it. And in fact, they didn't fire upon Admiral Byrd after his meeting with the master, who just admonished him on the US using nuclear bombs. He was allowed to fly right on back out. And
That's
then
a very interesting slant on the story, which I've always followed. He went to prison, military prison, because of what he knew, didn't he?
so then he's still a military man. He's still in charge of the whole armada of ships. They were ordered to go to offshore of New Schwabenland, and they found some of the outbuildings of Point 211, the base 211 near the Schumacher Ponds, and they started a bombing campaign on the first day, just sort of a reconnaissance, but they're going back the next day to really hit it hard. And all those planes just disappeared. And all those pilots had never been seen or heard from ever again. On the same day, that's when the ships came up out of the water and confronted the armada. They shot everything they had at them. They couldn't even come close to taking one down. They had a certain kind of force field that wouldn't allow those ordinances to penetrate the craft. But the craft did take out one destroyer ship, just zapped it with a laser beam, kind of like a directed energy weapon. This is in early 1947.
And this is, excuse me for interrupting, this is on a military record, or is that,
No, high jump is still top secret.
yeah,
High
but
jump is still,
where
a
does this,
lot of this information came out through the Russians. So when the Soviet Union dissolved, 1989, you could show up with a suitcase full of hard currency of another country because the ruble was going through massive hyperinflation. And you could go to Moscow and say you want to meet someone with the KGB and you want UFO files and things like this. So there was a huge disclosure that occurred in the early 1990s when
wow.
a lot of this information could be bought and then eventually put on the internet. But they did a documentary about Operation High Jump in about 20 years ago, where a lot of their information came out about how the U.S. lost very one-sided battle. And that's when High Jump ended. It was a 6-month expedition. It ended after 2 months. And Admiral Byrd made the famous quote that he didn't mean to scare anyone, but we will be confronted with an enemy that can fly pole to pole at incredible speeds. And that was reprinted in El Mercurio newspaper. Some people interpret it as saying we'll be confronted with an enemy that'll fly from the poles, but it kind of means the same thing. If you're going to fly from the poles, you obviously have some exotic aircraft to do that. So when Byrd returned, yeah, he got read the riot act and he went into quarantine, and for the rest of his life, there was a gag order on him. And even though he was one of the most decorated soldiers in US history, he could only speak in kind of a veiled way. So, for example, when he did an interview in the 1950s with Longines Watch Company, remember that black and white video?
Yes.
And in it, he made some remarks that are still very curious. Why would he say that? And they asked, well, where could a young man who wants to explore go? And he said, well, the North Pole is pretty crowded now, but you can go down to Antarctica, and there's still a lot of territory to explore and new lands to discover. And one of them, he said, is beyond the pole. Well, what is beyond the pole? There's nothing beyond the pole in any direction. It's just the polar plateau. It's 2 miles of ice. But if you go into the hole, then there is beyond the pole, and that would be a new land to explore. So he kind of gave us these little hints. Yeah, that there was something else down there.
Wow. I would have owed to have had a chance to speak to that man.
Oh boy, wouldn't
Yeah.
it be great?
Sometimes I think to myself, if the question, if you could have dinner with anybody in history, who would it be? And Bird would be one of them for me, for
I,
sure.
I would agree. You and me both. We'll take him out to the nicest French dinner we can find.
All right, so let's go back to we were on a track that I'd like to get back to when we were talking about the movie From Hell, Leave the World Behind,
Yeah.
and you were saying that they were forecasting and predictive programming what's coming, and so this is a big question on everybody's mind, and that is this being put into place now? Do you foresee that we are going to have this great cyber attack? Because it certainly looks like they're wanting to let us know it's very soon now. I'd love to have your insights on that and how that's going to play out.
Well, it's already started to happen. There have been so-called cyber attacks in smaller communities around the world already. This is something else, a big story in 2024, and we're not even a week into it. That, yeah, if they're predictive programming it or if it's really happening, probably a combination of both. We know how vulnerable our especially the grid is in this country. It's 19th century technology. I mean, could you imagine how advanced we'd been if we went along with Tesla and his world system and created a free energy system? There would be no pollution at this point. Everything could be powered wirelessly. That was the whole project of Tesla. So to take down our grid, it's almost like taking down the Twin Towers that were filled with asbestos. It was already antiquated. They knew they had to get rid of them, but how do you do it? Well, maybe an insurance scam would be the best way because somebody's going to make a lot of money on that, but also to take it out and then start over. And already there are inventors doing Tesla experiments, one in Texas, which is recreating the Wardenclyffe Tower, which was his distribution system of putting out wireless energy. So even Tesla himself said you could have planes that would never have to land. You could have ships that could sail around the world and never have to go in for refueling. It's the ultimate dream of free technology. And then, of course, the applications are going into outer space with it. So now that inventors are playing a little catch up with Tesla technology, I think they see that our electrical grid basically has to be removed, taken out. It's not the course of our future. It's already failing in many different ways. Look, New York City had another blackout. Some of these substations blowing up and they have a blackout. And it's a very dangerous time. If these blackouts continue for more than a couple hours, it could lead to looting and murder and just chaos in the streets.
All they're doing is electric grid. So it's like if you don't have a replacement for it, what does the future hold? Even here on my little island, which I thought maybe I would be escaping the insanity. We got the electric bikes yesterday. We've got the new lights. I'm like, seriously? We've only got 15,000 people on this island. And yet it's becoming a prototype. It is. The electric bikes, the elimination of the roads. We have 2 roads, walkways, promenade decks, and all these electric bike stations appearing. I'm like, okay, where do I have to go? How much further out do I have to get? But in the case of the States, it's like, okay, great. I like the idea that we need to upgrade the grid, but I don't foresee that will be in place before the whole damn thing comes down. So then what? Because if you think it's a couple of hours before the looting, let's try to put a perspective without getting pessimistic here of what this mass onslaught of unidentified people coming in with, what did you call it? When they get their order?
Sleeper cells.
Yeah, sleeper cells that are waiting for their order. So you got the sleeper cells being flown, $5,000 in their pocket, places to stay, 5-star hotels, and waiting for their order. Then what? What happens? Because obviously what you're talking about is not in place yet. The replacement of this grid is not in place yet. And the intention, which is what I started out this conversation with, what is the intent? Who profits from any given activity or act? So if they take down the whole damn grid, which I imagine was the focus of the movie, then what?
Yeah.
Then what happens?
You take down the whole grid, you take down the whole country, don't you? There's an old saying that goes back to the French Revolution that you'll have total societal collapse if people go hungry for 8 meals. So 8 meals to revolution, 3 days. If people aren't eating, if the supermarkets are looted, if everything's boarded up, and you only have what you have. It doesn't matter how rich you are. If you have not prepared for that day and are not sitting on some emergency supplies. Look, I lived in California for half of my life, and it was just pounded into our head. Everybody be ready for an earthquake. And I was there for the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. I've never experienced anything like it in my life.
Wow.
And indeed, within hours, all of the grocery stores, convenience stores, everything was either boarded up or just everybody panic bought,
Where
right?
were
So you basically have what you have, or you have a couple hours to get some things.
yeah.
If it were an EMP attack, electromagnetic pulse, and they've already shown that Russia and China have the potential to hit us with an EMP weapon, which basically pulses an electro force that basically takes out all the substations, all the electrical grid for hundreds of miles in all directions, pretty close to coast to coast. So that's just one weapon. If they hit the US with several. Now, it seems to me that there's a lot of different theaters of war that are heating up. China wants to take Taiwan. Xi has already said that in 2024, China will be unified with Taiwan. Didn't say how it was going to happen, but he's already made that proclamation. Then you have Maduro down in Venezuela showing a map of Venezuela that takes the country of Guyana, which is now oil rich, and they want to annex that. And then, of course, you've got what's going on in Ukraine and Israel. The US would not be able to fight 3 or 4 theaters of war simultaneously. Of course, everything's heating up in the Red Sea. The US is making threats to Yemen that they're going to bomb the Houthis for taking over some of the shipping lanes.
Iran,
And
let's not forget Iran.
what if all this happened, Patricia, right when we got hit with an EMP attack and these sleeper cells became activated? That would take America to its knees. That is the goal. They have to get America to basically become slaves to this World Economic Forum globalists. That is the end objective.
How close
And
are
then
we?
the other thing that's, let's put this in the mix as well. 2024 is the prophesized date of Project Bluebeam, the fake alien invasion.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second because that's a big one.
Yeah.
And that would be the initiating stage into full global governance, the full New World Order agenda. This is what Werner von Braun told his assistant Carol Rosen back in the 70s, that they would fake this alien invasion in order to initiate full global government. Well, the only thing standing in the way of global governance is the Second Amendment in the US and enough American citizens who could stand up and fight against it. Look, if America goes down, there's no country that could stand up to these guys. Well, at least they think in the West. I
Not
mean,
just America. It's not countries anymore. If America goes down, the whole damn thing goes. If the grid goes down
right,
in America, it's the entire global grid system. So we're already in a
exactly.
global situation. I mean, the focus is on America right now, but
Right.
it's not limited to that. So when people are still thinking in nationalistic terms, it's like, no, that we're at the point now, we're talking the entire globe. So and it's I just have to insert here that I'm not a youngster, so I remember when Khrushchev said, "We don't have to invade America because America is going to self-destruct from within. We will see. You will see this in your lifetimes. That's the plan from within." So
Yep.
the question, I guess we can make the leap now to the 2024 question of the faked invasion. And I had this conversation with Michael Salla a while ago. It's like easy to fake the attack of an evil alien force, much more powerful and also easy to fake a sort of James T. Kirk of the Starship Enterprise kind of guy that looks like it's a benevolent civilization that's coming in to assist and it's going to help us get on board with the Galactic Federation, but we're going to have to follow some so easy things to adhere to in order to be absorbed and accepted into this alliance. And all of the rhetoric is out there that people representing the Galactic Federation, which I take with a grain of salt, and people, especially people in our communities, who can't wait for this.
Mm.
I talk to your average new age spiritual truther person, can't wait for aliens to arrive.
Well, maybe they just did down in the Miami Mall 2 nights ago. Just see all the videos on that 8 to 10 foot aliens with the biggest police presence I've ever seen.
What?
for a bunch of juveniles fighting each other with sticks. Oh yeah, Carrie Cassidy sent me the links on this, and other people. There was this huge kerfluffle down in a Miami mall 2 nights ago, and this enormous hundreds of police cars. You can't imagine why they would have such a presence. But here's the kicker, Patricia. And I'm not saying I believe it was these aliens, but why this incredible amount of presence? They had helicopters flying over the mall. They even shut down the Miami airport for a while and canceled flights
I haven't heard about this at all.
over a flight in a mall. That makes no damn sense. So
And,
something went down there, and it's all on social media. Your listeners can probably
but it's
find
supposed to
what
be
they
an
want.
presence.
There were eyewitnesses that said 8 to 10 foot tall aliens. So is this the return of the Anunnaki or the Nephilim? I don't know. Tall whites or just tall guys like me being mistaken. But what a, and you can see the videos of all the cop cars. It's like, okay, 3 or 4 or 5 cop cars for a fight among juveniles, but 100 cop cars and closing down the airspace, that seems very suspicious.
That is very suspicious. And again, how easy, if you think about it, how considering the masked marauders that are supposedly in the White House with their silicone face masks, how difficult
Yeah.
it is to fake some aliens walking around. Come on.
And maybe that's really what's going on is it's more of this predictive programming that they're putting it out there. Oh, let's let the alternative media run with this 8 foot tall aliens, where really it's just people in costumes and masks to perpetuate the story, to soften us up.
That's
Do you
right.
remember in May of last year, Lester Holt comes on the NBC Nightly News and says the Pentagon has released a report that there's a mothership in our solar system. I'm thinking, what?
And
I'm
nobody
not a
said,
mainstream media watching guy, but how come this isn't the biggest news story of the year? We should still be talking about it. Where is this mothership? Is it still in our solar system? What does it look like? Who do you think they are? But it was a one and done. It's predictive programming to get us thinking, hey, the aliens, they're here. Okay, now they're on Earth in one of our shopping malls to get us just desensitized to the idea that the aliens are here. And that's predicating this Project Bluebeam, this
and
whole alien invasion.
the response, measuring the response. I mean, let's
Yes.
go back to when Clinton came out with the Martian rock, and there was almost no reaction to that. That back in the day, we were still in total. I mean, not we, but a lot of humans were in total denial of anything but Earth life. And then, well,
Yeah.
this rock, it might be a prehistoric, whatever. And that disappeared too. And I was like, that was only 20 years ago or so, 20, 25 years ago. And now we've got the Pentagon saying there's a mothership in our orbit, and nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to look up from their cell phone long enough to have an opinion about it. But I did not
Right.
hear about the aliens in the mall. That's cute. But I really
That
do
is cute.
believe that that's the way they're going to do it. I think they're going to, first of all, yeah, the softening up is in progress. Let's not forget it was in Reno or Las Vegas when the 3 people saw the
Vegas.
in their backyard. Funny though, nobody seemed to have a cell phone to tape it. They're taping their spaghetti noodles, but aliens land in the backyard. They don't seem to have between 3 men a cell phone to photograph it. But yeah, I think that this reality is unfolding very possibly within 2024. And the question
Oh,
will
yeah.
be, hopefully, I'd like to think that there eventually will be an alien presence that comes in and says, no, hold it here, just a moment. You guys
Well,
are
that's what they should do, right? Say, hey, don't blame us. We're the good guys. We're not going to take over your planet. You're going to use us to take over your planet.
right. Don't
And look, there's no doubt that 2024 is the year of the showdown because of this election coming up in November. In 10 months, the most contested election in US history. And it is going to be the showdown between the globalists who will probably want to cancel it. You see some videos of people asking Alexa, hey, Alexa, who's going to win the 2024 election? They say, there will be no 2024 election. It will be suspended. And what that means is if you suspend an election for whatever reason, EMP attack, alien invasion, financial collapse, and you can see the writing on the wall that that's coming down the pike too, that the administration that is in charge, this pretendency, remains in charge
Exactly right.
in a national emergency. So that's the other possible outcome here in November, is that there will not be an election because we will be in a state of emergency.
Yeah, whether it's World War III, which we're already in, or this alien arrival, or the cyber whatever, I find it personally, I find it very hard to believe that we're going to have an erection. I'm sorry, I know that cracks you up, but I'm trying to avoid getting blipped on.
Kind of what it is.
But and of course we know who's really running the show. At least, okay, there's the people who believe the commander in C theory of Mr. T.
Mhm.
But in the meantime,
Yeah.
of Obama with living out his wet dream in the basement with the. You remember that little speech he made about nothing would thrill me more than to run the show from the basement with a two. Did you ever hear him say that?
Eyepiece, yeah, an earpiece and the new president. Yeah, yeah.
Things from
Funny how
every.
that played out.
Yeah, and so we know that that's what's been happening. So this would be then his fourth term,
Yep.
right? And then bring in Big Mike. I mean, they're surely greasing that. It's interesting. I don't think we need to go into that now because we're winding up the hour, but that's a whole conversation for another day. But so, do you think there will be this event, this erection? You froze. That is so cute.
I think the globalists have,
Like this and
yeah.
froze. It was just a great picture. I hope that it's on tape. So you don't
Yeah,
know.
the erection. These globalists are exposed in such a way that they are now, with the Epstein files coming out and the whole blackmail program, that they're being seen in a whole new light. They do not like the exposure. So they're in a desperate situation. We know that when an animal is wounded and backed into a corner, it is at its most ferocious state.
Most dangerous.
So I'm not surprised if they're going to throw everything they got at us, including the kitchen sink this year, to postpone the erection or to swing it the way they need it. Because Mr. T coming back is an absolute nightmare, is the end of this NWO agenda. And so they're fighting for their very lives here. And that's why 2024 is the year of the showdown. You're going to see it on both sides. The white hats are making their moves, but the black hats are also making their big moves. So it's the grand game of chess that is coming down to the final move. And you can't make your move until your opponent, when it's their turn, makes their move. And so I think it's at that point that the last move is now up to this cabal. And when they do, it's checkmate for the white hats. But they'll probably be like a petulant child when they know they lost the game and just throw up the board and say, okay, I quit. And just do something very irregular rather than just admit defeat and try to walk away. Or,
About the
as
cabal.
Ben Fulford says, they're now pleading. They're trying to make deals for their own survival. So that's actually a good sign if they are trying to get out of it. But I just saw some videos of protests in Switzerland in front of the Rothschild estates. So indeed, it's like the French Revolution.
Wow.
The proletariats are showing up with their pitchforks outside the gates of the royal palaces, and this is making them running scared. So they're going to try to pull every trick in the book they got
Right, but
to get
meanwhile,
out of this.
I'm waiting for this wonderful, final chess piece. They are putting in all of these systems. They're putting in the cities, the smart cities. They're putting in the digital. My question is, I guess it's not even a question. My rhetorical question is, at what point is this showdown? And I guess what you're saying is November. But if there is no election in
Leading
November,
up,
oops, I said the word.
Patricia, here in America, it'd be a good time to hunker down, or maybe even look for another alternative outside of America. But certainly myself, I'm already in a rural environment and kind of a hidden location where, I got what I need for me and my loved ones. But I'm taking off to Southeast Asia for about a month. And yeah, it seems like every day something new is coming out, some new predictive programming, more about aliens. And more about the Epstein list. So that is exposing the globalists, and they absolutely hate it. They tried for so long to keep that black book of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's list hidden from us. And now you have a courageous judge who's bringing it out. But the big bombshell is on the 20th. And those will be the names who really didn't want to be named.
So
And
the
so it's just happening on a daily basis.
yeah,
It's leading up something big.
yeah, people should definitely glean from this conversation that this is the time.
Hmm.
I call it the year of the prepper. This is the time, baby. I mean, what you have is what you'll have, and make sure that you're stocked
If
up.
there was ever a time.
Yeah.
And look, worst case scenario, 2 years from now, nothing happens. You just donate your bags of beans and rice and canned food to a homeless shelter.
That's right.
You do a good deed. What's it cost you now? A couple $100
That's
as a
exactly.
little hedge. But
Yeah, you're
like
just
they say in California, always be prepared. Boy Scout motto.
you're no
And
longer in
good
California, right?
advice.
You've left California permanently.
I have left California for good. As far as being a resident and living there. No, I'm in Nevada now.
That's good. Good for you. And a undisclosed location.
Yeah.
Brad, listen, I could talk to you forever. I'm thrilled that I got to talk to you before you leave. And I imagine you'll be communicating all your wonderful news from there. So let us know what you're up to. And, watch
Where
out
is he now?
on the plane, because I'm convinced that all these people with the brain clotting, the things that are going on in the planes, because they're in these planes, there's all this 5G and all these, uh,
Oh,
you know, waves and these brain clots. People are just losing their minds on the planes. I'm sure you're aware of this.
oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I never pay for the Wi-Fi or I don't even watch movies. I just have my own iPhone with my own music already on there, so I'm not connected, and I'll just
Oh, what I mean is that a lot
try
of
to
the
sleep.
people that have had the Jabberwock
Oh yeah, yeah,
are, full of clots, brain clots. So we know about thrombosis
right.
and how the airline is always warning people to keep moving around because of the problems of thrombosis. So what's happening is all these microclotted people are losing their brains on the plane. I shouldn't laugh, but it's just, plane travel lately is getting pretty scary. So eyes
It
open.
is.
Okay.
Yeah, eyes wide open. And I also fly in, through, and out of Taipei, Taiwan. So hopefully China is not starting any reunification while I'm going through and out.
That's what you
But
call adventure travel, Brett.
yeah, well, I'm looking forward to just kind of hanging out and getting lost in the jungle for a few weeks. That sounds pretty good to me. Just
Don't forget
we're not having much of a ski season here, so I'm a big skier. My season pass is just an hour away, but it's only 25% of snow as of New Year's Day. They're getting some snow now, but it looks like it's kind of be a wash. So I'm just like, yeah, okay, I got this opportunity to go to Asia. Hell yeah.
just remember what I said about the miracle stuff. Make
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. Good advice.
All right. Do you
I'll
want
have to dig some out, dig
with
with.
here's my dog. She almost died. She's better now.
Ah,
She knows when it's the end of an interview. Do you want to leave us with a pearl of wisdom or two?
hey, just like you said, Patricia, to everybody out there, really, it's the year to be prepared. We're going to have a lot of fireworks on the horizon, and just be there mentally prepared. And also arm yourself with some good reading material. I saw your latest book got reviewed in Nexus Magazine. Pick up Patricia's latest book. You can check out my books at cccpublishing.com, and
I'll have the link for
have
everyone.
some good reading material, because when the lights go out, you might just have a flashlight and candles to occupy yourself. But
Yeah,
we're going to get through this.
and
I
that's
think there is light at the end of the tunnel, and don't give in to the fear. Just be prepared and be smart. We're always hoping for the best, but we're preparing for the worst.
That's exactly right. And back to the books, I was just telling people in the intro, it's really important that books that you really love, books that are full of information that can serve you, you really want to have in paperback, because Fahrenheit 451 is coming to the digital scope.
Yeah.
The information you think you have available to you will probably not be. So if you Brad's books, my books, pick them up and stash them so you can nourish your spirit, your soul, your mind. in these times. Great change. All right, Brad, have a great flight. Thank you for your time. Love you.
Love you too, Patricia. Thanks for having me on. Always great to talk to you. That was a wonderful hour that just passed.
Yeah. Well, when you get back, let's get back together, okay?
Sounds good.
All right.
It's a date.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. You've been listening to Beyond the Matrix, the show that invites you to think outside the box. Bye from my crazy pepper here. Bye from Brad. I'll see you in the next one.